Okay, some days, you know, just don't work out quite the way that you want them to. And today should have done, because yesterday was a big day. It was Valentine's Day, but today's a big day also because, of course, it's my birthday. I'm 39 years old today. And I know what you're thinking. I know what you're thinking. My God, you barely look 25. How on earth can you be 39 years old? I know. And if you're not thinking that, please keep it to yourself. It is my birthday, so you have to be nice to me. If you want to say anything nasty, say it tomorrow. That's fine. We can go back to the nastiness tomorrow. Let's stick with niceness towards Jimmy today, if we could. What I wanted to do today, it's not gone to plan. Even though it's my birthday, I was going to grace you with another video extravaganza. I made a video last week about who that's famous today will still be famous in 10,000 years' time, asking people what they thought. I wanted to go back on some of the replies I received and make a few comments. That's what I intended to, but it's not really gone to plan today, because a bit of a drama, a bit of a kind of localised shitstorm. You know, not a YouTube hurricane that drags in thousands of people, but a little tornado, a little whirlwind twirling around, a little twister there, dragging a few people up. Started off with Jezuzfreek777 and a comment that he'd made on an old video. I won't play you a clip, I'll tell you what he said. Basically, his point was that, looking back at the case of Abraham and being willing to sacrifice his son Isaac to God on God's whim, Jezuzfreek hopes that his faith would be great enough that if God asked that of him, that he would be prepared to butcher his son to death in cold blood in exactly the same manner. That he hopes his faith is great enough that he would be prepared to make that kind of sacrifice. Of course, it goes without saying that God would never ask anybody to do that, even though he has asked somebody to do that, and even though he did it himself. But there you go. That's part of the mentality. But it's the Superfly Todd took exception to that. He wasn't really happy with that, and he suggested that people should report Jezuzfreek to the Child Protection Services on the back of this. Well, that's one of the things I would like to go into, is this particular issue. But before we go into that issue, it then moved on. A woman called Mel's Basket Case got involved, and Mel's Basket Case, I think, is played by Mark Fox, famous for the character Lil Marky. And if you don't know what I mean, have a look at this clip.
Hello, I told you he was a drama queen. Please check this out. It's a Superfly. He links to my video to sick his atheist mad dogs on me. You fucking bitch of a man! That's all I have to say to you.
Well, look, you've got to admit there is a similarity in voice there, although whether Mel, or indeed any human being that's ever lived, would be prepared to wear Mark Fox's lemon yellow sweater, I have my doubts. But it's interesting that I played you that particular clip, and in fact it's not a clip, that is the entirety of Mel's second video response to Todd. Her first video response made 2 points. The first was to comment and disagree with Todd on this idea that Jeff, Jezuzfreek777, should be reported to the Child Protection Services. And the other thing was to accuse Todd of being a drama queen, to say that his video, alongside making certain points about Jezuzfreek, was laced with drama that just wasn't necessary, and that it was a bit over the top, and that she found it a bit distasteful. And the real irony is, therefore, that I'm certainly not the first person to pick it up, that then she makes this second response, which is unbridled, 100% double distilled drama. That's all that's involved in the video. There is nothing but drama in this rather short video that she's made here. So yeah, I'm certainly not the first person to pick that up, or to mention pots, kettles, and the shade black. So I'm going to leave that one aside, because the conversation can kind of degenerate along those lines. Then this guy Conferencereport got involved. He's chimed in and accused Todd in a roundabout way of being a bit of a bully and setting people onto this Mel's Basket case, and then other people have made the point that Mel's Basket case goes around and makes responses to 101 different people, and what the fuck do you expect, quite honestly, if you're going to do that? I'm not really interested in that. What I want to deal with is this issue of the child protection services and whether Jesus Freak should be reported to them as suggested by Todd, or not reported as suggested by Mel. And this particular case, on pragmatic grounds, I come down on the side of Mel. Unusual, on nearly everything else, I come down on the side of Todd. Nearly everything else I agree with Todd. This is the one thing I disagree with him about. Let's first say that if Christianity was regarded as a cult, and the only real difference between Christianity and a cult is the fact that it's too big for us to call it a cult, let's be honest. If it was regarded as a cult, then I think most of us wouldn't have any problem. We would be really disturbed by what had been said and would probably think this is a bit dangerous. We need to put this in the hands of the authorities. But the problem is, because Christianity is so big, well, there's two problems. One is that because Christianity is so big, Christians can get away with saying things which they wouldn't if they had some other religious persuasion that only had a fraction of the membership. And the second thing is, because Christianity is so big, really what we'd be doing is we'd be punishing Jeff for telling the truth, for calling it as he sees it, because we know that for every Jeff who admits to something like this, there are millions and millions of other Jeffs who feel the same thing, that wish that, or at least hope that their faith would be strong enough that if God asked them to kill their child in his name, that they hope that their faith would be great enough that they would do it. Certainly not all Christians, please, not all Christians, but there's plenty of Christians who feel like that. Millions of Christians, in fact. So on pragmatic grounds, I have to ask, if we punish Jeff, we're purely punishing Jeff for being honest. If we really want to tackle this, we have to report all the Christians who feel like Jeff and all the Muslims who feel like Jeff. Nearly every country in the world, their child protection services would be overwhelmed by the amount of reports that we're making. And perhaps people who present a more real and present danger to their children might go undetected, while people such as this, while we're investigating, in fact, people such as this on grounds that may actually never injure their or do anything bad to their children. So that's the first point, just the sheer weight of numbers. So on to the second point, and this is really no less practical than the first. You know, you need to look at the implications of not reporting Jeff, but you need to look at the implications of reporting Jeff, which is exactly what Mel said. You know, that there's going to be some detrimental effect on the child, potentially, of reporting Jeff to the child protection services. Sure, you might be removing him from the danger of Jeff hearing this voice in his head, deciding to act on the voice, which is two separate things, by the way, and butchering the child in cold blood, like that, or however. But at the same time, you've got to weigh that against what the damage to the child of potentially being taken away from his parents, potentially being put into care, at the very least the stress that will go on within the family environment of his parents being put under an investigation. So when you conduct these things, we usually conduct some kind of risk analysis, don't we? And we look at the likelihood against the severity. Clearly, in this case, the severity of reporting to the CPS isn't as great as the severity of not, and it all going horribly wrong. But the likelihood is substantially greater. Assuming the Child Protection Services take this seriously and investigate, then the likelihood is 100% that there's going to be a detrimental effect on the child. The only thing that's unknown is how detrimental. Will the child actually be taken away from the parents? Which is, after all, what Todd, I think, is hoping for in this scenario. So there, we're accepting that there's going to be some damage to the child. The question is whether the severity multiplied by the likelihood of not reporting is greater. And perhaps this is where I'm disagreeing with Todd on this point, because although I accept the severity, you can hardly doubt or argue with the severity of being murdered. I think the likelihood is substantially lower, and that's for a number of reasons. One of the reasons is that, to be honest, I actually don't think Christians really take this very seriously. They talk about voices of God talking to them, but most of the time it's bullshit, and they actually know it's bullshit themselves. God always seems to say, or at least 99% of the time, what they want God to say. I used to work for a guy who ran a sort of ministry in the UK, and do you know that God told him to go and take a job abroad that paid him hundreds of thousands of pounds every year? How convenient is that? You know, I've got a clip here that I want to play you of a guy called Pastor Jerry. I don't know if he makes videos anymore. He's the Woods of Jordan's father. And God talks to him. I just love this clip. This is one of my most favourite clips on YouTube. I've put this up several times. This is Pastor Jerry. Let's see how seriously Pastor Jerry takes it when God communicates with him.
The Lord revealed to me earlier this week, possibly last week, I can't remember the exact day. I know it was in the morning time.
I really do love that clip. That's just got to be one of my all-time favourite clips. I'm just sure if God spoke to me, then I'd remember when it had happened. Just, you know, even a few days later, he's not really that sure what day it was, to be quite honest. And this is the thing: how seriously are these people really taking this? And how seriously would they have to take it before they actually were prepared to act on something? It's easy to talk the talk. It's not quite so easy to walk the walk. And even of those people that do walk the walk, God always seems to say the nice things. It's only a small minority that probably have mental issues that would manifest in some other way, even if they weren't religious, that seem to have their deity suggest all these malevolent acts for them. So I really don't quite sense the danger to the level that Todd does, even though people do some things. Todd mentions in one of his videos honour killings, for example, but that's often based on a slightly different thing. That's not God directly whispering in their ear saying, yes, now sacrifice your child, now sacrifice your child. That's based on an interpretation of Scripture and saying that in these circumstances you've been disgraced, and this is a legitimate circumstance in which to sacrifice your child. I think that's subtly different, and I think we kind of know that. That's why, you know, one thing that Christianity does have over what we often regard of as cults is that we've seen so many Christians talk this kind of crap and never enact it. You know, it's so easy to say it, it's not so easy to do it. But when you have some new age or new religion that we don't really know very much about, well, we don't really know what their boundaries are. We don't know if they're actually serious about what they're saying in a way that really I don't think Jeff is. He says it while it's easy to say it, but if he did have that voice, I don't think he'd do it. I don't think he'd trust himself. I think he'd think, no, that wasn't really God's voice. That's a phantasm of the brain. That's my perspective. My perspective is that the risk of taking the child away is greater than the risk of not taking the child away. On those grounds, I agree with Mel. But that's not to say that what Jeff says, it's not to find any good in anything that Jeff said, because there's no good that can be found in that. I have no admiration for that kind of faith. What kind of admiration can you have for that kind of faith that leads you potentially to butcher your own child? I'm sorry, that if he expects any kind of kudos or credit for that kind of thing, well, I won't give him any more than Todd does. That's pretty much all I want to say. I want to stick out the drama of whether Todd's a drama queen or all this kind of thing. It's bullshit, and I can't stand bullshit. Now that's drama, that's proper drama, and that's proper acting. You want some decent acting, I'm the man you need to be employing, not Todd, because I think actually Todd is a pretty genuine bloke, and he means what he says. He is as an ex-Christian, I think he's especially offended by this kind of thing. Okay, that's really all I want to say on this. It's interesting to see how it plays out, and it's going to be nice to just stand on the sidelines and see what happens. Later on in the week, I'll get back to the video that I was supposed to be making, okay? Because I've got some points that I really want to make about who should be famous 10,000 years from now, and some of the responses that I received on that. Thank you for watching this video. Bye for now, and a happy birthday, me.